The wind howled like a wounded animal against the walls of the cabin in the White Mountains. Outside, the world had disappeared under a merciless white blanket that continued to grow with each passing minute of the storm. Inside, the fireplace created a comforting contrast, painting Celeste's face with golden hues as she rocked Orion, her 3-month-old baby. "So I think this is the worst blizzard of the winter so far," murmured Soren, her husband, adding another log to the fire. The flames crackled, devouring the new offering with voracity. The radio said it might last until tomorrow. Celeste nodded, adjusting the blanket wrapped around Orion. Isolation was part of the life they had chosen when they moved to this remote cabin, but on nights like this, the solitude seemed more pronounced, more tangible. "At least we have food, warmth, and a roof over our heads," she replied, kissing her sleeping son's forehead. It was in this moment of tranquility that the sound came, almost imperceptible at first, easily mistaken for the wind. But then it repeated, a soft scratch against the front door followed by a low, trembling whimper. Soren's eyes met Celeste's. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. Soren frowned and slowly stood up, probably just a branch dragged by the wind. But something in his expression betrayed doubt. The sound came again, more distinct this time. A deliberate scratch, followed by a whimper that seemed laden with desperation. "There's something out there, Soren." He cautiously approached the window, pulling back the curtain. What he saw made his entire body freeze. There, in the snow that was already almost 2 feet deep, was a thin dog, her coat covered with ice. Her large, dark eyes stared at the window with a silent plea. "It's a dog," he said, his voice tense. "Looks to be in terrible shape." Celeste joined him at the window, still holding Orion. It was then they realized the dog wasn't alone. 3 tiny puppies shivered against her body, almost completely covered by the snow that continued to fall mercilessly, whispered Celeste, her heart tightening. "So they'll die if they stay out there." Soren backed away, his face a mask of conflict. "We don't know anything about these dogs, Celeste. They could be aggressive or sick. Look at them, Soren. They're freezing to death right on our doorstep." He ran his hand through his hair, his hesitation evident. Celeste knew that expression well. She knew he was reliving that moment from his childhood, when a stray dog had bitten him without provocation, leaving not just a physical scar, but a fear that never really disappeared. "We have a baby to protect," he argued, his voice low. "We can't just let wild animals in." As if hearing the discussion, Orion woke up and began to cry, his wailing filling the cabin. And then, something extraordinary happened. Outside, the dog lifted her head and emitted a long, melancholy whimper, as if responding to the baby. Orion's crying abruptly ceased. To his parents' amazement, the baby stretched his little arms toward the door, his wide blue eyes fixed in that direction. "Did you see that?" whispered Celeste, feeling something inexplicable pass between them, a connection that transcended logic. Soren swallowed hard, his gaze alternating between his son and the canine family dying in the snow. Something in his face changed, as if a silent revelation had occurred. "I'll get some blankets," he finally said, his voice still carrying a trace of resistance. "But stay back when I open the door." Celeste nodded, holding Orion closer. As she watched her husband prepare a space near the fireplace and fill a bowl with warm water, she felt that something profound was about to change in their lives. That freezing night would be just the beginning of a journey none of them could foresee. The door opened with a creak, allowing a gust of icy wind to invade the cabin. Soren positioned himself at the entrance, holding a thick blanket, while Celeste remained a few steps behind with Orion. The dog didn't move. Her eyes, large and attentive, watched the humans with a mixture of hope and caution. The puppies trembled against her, small balls of fur almost unrecognizable under the layer of snow. "It's okay," said Soren, his voice softer than he intended. "Come on." For a tense moment, nothing happened. Then, with slow and painful movements, the dog stood up. Her bones were visible beneath her soaked fur, and she limped slightly. With surprising gentleness, she picked up one of the puppies by the scruff and took a hesitant step toward the door. She stopped, as if waiting for permission. "She's waiting to see if it's safe," observed Celeste, marveling at the animal's intelligence. Soren placed the blanket on the floor near the entrance. "Come," he repeated, stepping back to give space. The dog cautiously entered, depositing the first puppy on the blanket before returning for the other 2. When finally all were inside, Celeste closed the door, blocking the howling wind. "She's exhausted," said Celeste, observing how the dog immediately collapsed on the blanket, allowing the puppies to snuggle against her. Soren filled a bowl with warm water and placed it near the blanket. "Just for one night," he said firmly. "Tomorrow we'll look for the nearest animal shelter." As the dog eagerly drank water, Celeste approached to better examine the puppies. They couldn't be more than a few weeks old, their eyes newly opened and bodies fragile. It was then that she noticed something alarming. "Soren," she called softly. "This one is injured." One of the puppies, slightly smaller than the others, had a front paw with a deep cut possibly caused by wire or a trap. The wound was inflamed, and the small animal whimpered softly with each movement. Before Celeste could do anything, the dog intervened. With surprising gentleness, she pushed the injured puppy towards Celeste, as if deliberately asking for help. "Oh my God," whispered Celeste, feeling a lump in her throat. Soren, who was watching the scene with visible perplexity, brought the first aid kit. "This is unbelievable," he murmured, seeing how the dog attentively observed Celeste's every movement, without any sign of aggression. Carefully, Celeste cleaned the wound and bandaged the small paw. The dog didn't take her eyes off for a second, her attentive and intelligent gaze following every movement. "There, little one," said Celeste upon finishing. "You'll be okay now." As if understanding, the dog gently licked the puppy and then let out a long sigh, her body finally relaxing. "I think we'll call you Luna," murmured Celeste, noticing how the dog's fur, now beginning to dry, revealed silvery patches that resembled moonlight. Luna perked up her ears upon hearing the name as if approving it. That night, as the storm continued to rage outside, a strange calm took over the cabin. Orion slept peacefully in his crib, and Luna rested with her puppies near the fireplace. Soren, sitting at the table with a cup of coffee, observed the scene with an expression that mixed fascination and uncertainty. "I've never seen an animal act like this," he commented. "It's as if she knew exactly what we were doing." Celeste smiled, joining him at the table. Maybe she did. Animals are smarter than we give them credit for. Before they could continue the conversation, Luna suddenly raised her head, her ears up and body tense. A low growl formed in her throat as her eyes fixed on the darkness beyond the windows. "What is it, girl?" asked Soren, alarmed by the sudden change. The answer came in the form of a distant noise, almost inaudible under the howl of the wind, the sound of engines slowly approaching on the snow-covered road. What none of them realized was that the true ordeal was yet to come, approaching silently through the dark forest. Even before the sound of engines became clearly audible, Luna was already completely alert, her thin body now erect, ears tilted forward, eyes fixed on the window facing the forest. The growl in her throat was contained, but unmistakable. Soren cautiously approached the window, slightly pulling back the curtain. At first, all he saw was the darkness of the night and snowflakes dancing under the faint moonlight. Then, among the trees, he noticed the distant glow of flashlights moving through the forest. "There are people out there," he said, his body immediately tense. Celeste joined him at the window, Orion nestled in her arms. Who would be in the forest during a storm like this? The answer came when the lights approached enough to reveal two silhouettes moving among the trees, carrying what appeared to be rifles. "Hunters," murmured Soren, a chill running down his spine. Luna positioned herself protectively in front of her puppies, her gaze alternating between the window and the human family, as if assessing the danger. "What would they be hunting in a blizzard and in the middle of the night?" asked Celeste, her voice trembling. Soren swallowed hard. "It's not hunting season for any animal. And those rifles?" He hesitated. "They look illegal." Sudden understanding illuminated Celeste's eyes as she looked at Luna and her puppies. "They're looking for her." Luna growled louder, confirming the suspicion. "We need to get them out of here," decided Soren, surprising himself with the vehemence in his voice. "If these hunters find them—" He didn't need to finish the sentence. Acting quickly, Soren fetched a wooden crate from the storage room while Celeste prepared more blankets. "We'll take them to the car," he explained, lining the crate with blankets. "We can drive to the animal shelter in Grafton. It's the closest from here." Carefully, they placed the 3 puppies in the crate. The smallest, with the bandaged paw, whimpered softly, but calmed down when Luna licked his muzzle. "The lights are getting closer," warned Celeste, looking out the window. Soren peeked again. "We need to be quick and silent." He opened the back door, checking if the path was clear. The snow had already accumulated almost 2 feet, making movement difficult. With Celeste carrying the crate with the puppies and Soren guiding Luna, they began to move toward the garage where the SUV was parked. The steps were slow and heavy in the deep snow. Every sound seemed amplified in the quietness of the night, The crunch of snow under their feet, accelerated breathing, the occasional grunt of effort. They were halfway to the garage when a beam of light cut through the darkness, less than 100 yards away. Soren froze, signaling for Celeste to stop. "Get down," he whispered, pulling her behind a woodpile. Luna, surprisingly, remained perfectly still beside them, her body pressed against the snow, breathing slowly as if understanding the need for absolute silence. The voices of the hunters were now audible, carried by the wind. "I'm sure the tracks were going in this direction," said a deep, harsh voice. "They must be nearby." "This blizzard is covering everything," replied the other voice, irritated. "If we don't find them soon, we'll have to give up." The flashlight beam swept the area around the cabin, passing dangerously close to where they were hiding. Soren held his breath, feeling his heart hammer against his ribs. Beside him, Luna remained absolutely still, her dark eyes focused in the direction of the voices. "Let's check that cabin," suggested the first voice. "Maybe someone has seen something." Celeste squeezed Soren's arm, her face pale with fear. If the hunters approached the house, they would see signs that there were animals inside. The water bowl, the hairs on the blanket, the small footprints at the entrance. Time seemed frozen as they waited, each second stretching into an eternity of tension. Then, like an unexpected blessing, one of the hunters' radios crackled with an inaudible message. "Damn," grumbled the second voice. "We better head back. The storm is getting worse, and Marcus says he found tracks in the eastern area." The beams of light slowly moved away, returning to the dense forest. Soren waited until the lights were completely out of sight before moving again. "Now," he whispered. "Quick, before they change their minds." They resumed the path to the garage with renewed urgency. Soren opened the trunk of the SUV while Celeste placed the crate with the puppies on the back seat. To her surprise, Luna jumped into the vehicle without hesitation, positioning herself protectively next to her puppies. "Says she trusts us completely," commented Celeste, impressed. Soren started the engine, keeping the headlights off as he slowly maneuvered down the snow-covered path. Only when they were at a safe distance from the cabin did he turn on the lights, revealing the road almost unrecognizable under the white blanket. "Say it's going to be a long trip to Grafton in these conditions," he observed, hands gripping the steering wheel. In the back seat, Luna had lain down next to the crate, her head resting on the edge, vigilant eyes alternating between the window and her puppies. As they watched the flashlights cutting through the darkness among the trees, Celeste and Soren knew that the fate of Luna and her puppies now depended on a decision that would change their lives forever. The journey on the snowy road was slow and dangerous. The SUV advanced with difficulty, its tires struggling to find traction on the slippery surface. At every turn, Soren checked the rearview mirror, paranoid about the possibility of being followed. "Do you think they'll come after us?" asked Celeste, holding Orion against her chest while looking out the side window. The darkness of the forest seemed impenetrable beyond the reach of the headlights. Soren tightened his grip on the steering wheel. "I don't know. Depends on how determined they are." In the back seat, Luna remained vigilant, her dark eyes reflecting the occasional light from distant posts. The puppies had fallen asleep in the crate, exhausted after the trauma of the night. Why would anyone chase a dog and her puppies like this? Celeste shook her head, unable to comprehend such cruelty. Some illegal hunters see wild dogs as threats to game," explained Soren, his voice tense. "Others might be after them for even worse reasons." A heavy silence filled the car as they contemplated the implications. After almost 2 hours of cautious travel, they finally spotted the lights of Grafton. The small town was quiet under the blanket of snow, most establishments closed due to the storm. "The animal shelter is at the north exit," said Soren, maneuvering through the empty streets. When they reached the shelter, a simple wooden construction with a small illuminated sign, Soren hesitated before turning off the engine. "Wait here with Orion," he said. "I'll check if anyone's there." To his surprise, there was a light on in the shelter's office. A middle-aged woman answered the door after several insistent knocks, seeming surprised to have visitors amid the storm. "My goodness, what brings you here on a night like this?" she asked, identifying herself as Martha, the shelter administrator. Soren quickly explained the situation, omitting the part about the hunters to avoid complicating things. "We found this dog and her puppies almost dying in the snow," he said. "One of the puppies is injured. We need help." Martha followed him to the car, where Celeste had already gotten out and was standing by the open back door. Luna looked at the stranger with caution, her body slightly tensed. "Poor thing," murmured Martha, assessing Luna's condition with experienced eyes. "She's malnourished, but doesn't seem to be wild, probably abandoned or lost. With patience and gentleness, they managed to transfer Luna and her puppies into the heated shelter. Martha examined the injured puppy, praising Celeste's first aid work. "You saved their lives," she said, preparing food for Luna. A few more hours in that storm and she didn't need to complete the sentence. Everyone knew what would have happened. "What happens to them now?" asked Celeste, observing how Luna ate voraciously, occasionally stopping to check on her puppies. "We'll take care of them, treat the little injured one, and then try to find homes for all of them," explained Martha. "Although it's difficult to find someone who will adopt an entire litter." Soren and Celeste exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. "Leave your contact information," suggested Martha. "I can let you know about their progress." Reluctantly, they filled out a form and prepared to leave. When it came time to say goodbye, Celeste knelt beside Luna. "We'll miss you," she whispered, stroking the dog's head. Luna looked at her with those expressive eyes, then at Orion in Soren's arms, and finally at her own puppies nestled in the corner. There was an almost human understanding in her gaze that brought tears to Celeste's eyes. The journey back to the cabin was silent, each lost in their own thoughts. When they finally arrived home, the storm had diminished, leaving a white and tranquil world under the sky that was beginning to clear. Inside the cabin, Soren lit the fireplace while Celeste prepared Orion for bed. But something seemed wrong. The house, normally cozy, seemed strangely empty. Celeste entered the kitchen, finding Soren looking out the window, an untouched cup of coffee in his hands. "You miss them, don't you?" she asked softly. He sighed, his shoulders dropping. "And so do you." For a long moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the crackling of the fireplace and Orion's soft breathing on the baby monitor. Without saying a word, Soren picked up the car keys from the table. "Let's bring our family home." That night, lying in their bed, the silence of the cabin weighed like never before, and both knew that something fundamental had changed in their lives. The animal shelter looked different under the clear morning light. The snow sparkled like diamonds scattered around the simple building, and the sky had cleared to a crystalline blue that's only seen after major storms. Soren parked the SUV near the entrance, the engine still running as if he feared turning it off and changing his mind. Beside him, Celeste held Orion, who had just woken up and was observing the world with curious eyes. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Soren nodded, finally turning off the engine. "I've never been so sure of anything." The previous night had been revealing for both. After leaving Luna and her puppies at the shelter, the cabin, their refuge, had seemed strangely empty, as if something fundamental was missing. Martha seemed surprised, but not completely, to see them return so soon. "I figured you might come back," she said with a knowing smile. "It happens more often than people admit." She led them through the kennel area, where other dogs watched them hopefully. At the end of the corridor, in a separate space, was Luna with her 3 puppies. The moment Luna saw them was unforgettable. There wasn't the desperate frenzy often seen in anxious dogs. There were no excited barks or jumps against the gate. There was just the slow movement of her tail, not in a desperate or nervous way, but with the quiet certainty of one who always knew they would return. "She was waiting for you," commented Martha, her voice soft with admiration. When Orion saw Luna, he laughed and stretched his little arms toward her, repeating the gesture he had made that first night, as if closing a circle. Soren smiled, feeling something melt inside his chest, the last remnant of the fear he had carried for decades. "Looks like we don't have a choice now," he joked, but his eyes were moist. There were forms to fill out, fees to pay, and decisions to make. Luna would come with them, that was clear, but what about the puppies? "Normally, we don't recommend that families with small babies adopt multiple dogs at once," explained Martha, "but I also don't like to separate families." It was Orion who unknowingly made the final decision. While they discussed the options, the baby had leaned toward the puppy with the bandaged paw, the same one that Luna had pushed toward Celeste asking for help. The small dog licked Orion's hand, making him burst into a laugh of pure joy. "I think we're taking 2 of them," said Soren, surrendering to the inevitable. "A Luna and this little warrior. His name is Ash," decided Celeste, noticing how the puppy's coat, now clean, revealed a grayish tone like ashes, for having survived the cold and the fire of pain. The other 2 puppies would find a home with Martha herself, who had fallen in love with them and ensured that Luna could visit them whenever they wanted. The return home was completely different from the previous journey. Luna sat in the back seat with dignity, as if she had always belonged there, while Ash slept peacefully in Celeste's lap. When they arrived at the cabin, Luna got out of the car and waited patiently at the door, as if asking permission to enter her new home. "Welcome to the family," said Soren, opening the door. The following days were of adjustments and discoveries. Luna proved to be extremely intelligent and adaptable, quickly learning the routines of the house. She established a favorite spot near the fireplace, but at night insisted on sleeping near Orion's crib, like a silent guardian. Ash, still small and playful, followed Soren everywhere, captivating the man who once feared dogs. It was common to find them asleep together on the couch after long walks in the snow. A week after the adoption, during breakfast, Celeste watched through the kitchen window as the snow began to melt under the late winter sun. "You know what's funny?" she commented, serving more coffee to Soren. "We came to this place seeking isolation, thinking we only needed each other. And we ended up finding family where we least expected it." Soren nodded, observing Luna, who was resting near Orion playing in his playpen, with Ash nestled against his son. "Sometimes we need to get lost to find our way back home," he replied, his voice free of the fear that had accompanied him for so long. What began as an act of compassion on a stormy night was about to transform into a healing journey that none of them could have imagined. The years passed like pages turned by the wind. The small cabin in the White Mountains witnessed the seasons succeed each other in their eternal cycle, the immaculate white of winter giving way to the renascent green of spring, the vibrant heat of summer, and the colorful spectacle of autumn, only to begin again. Orion, once a helpless baby, was now an active 4-year-old boy with golden hair like his mother's and the same quiet determination as his father, and always by his side, inseparable as a faithful shadow, was Ash. The once injured puppy had transformed into a magnificent specimen, not very large but perfectly proportioned, with silver-gray fur and intelligent eyes that seemed to understand every word spoken in the house. The mark of his initial ordeal remained only in the slight limp he showed on particularly cold days, a silent reminder of the night that changed everyone's destiny. "Ash! Orion! Don't go too far," called Celeste from the porch, watching the two explore the yard covered by the first snowflakes of the year. Luna rested at her feet, her figure majestic and serene. At 7 years old, she still maintained vigilant watch over her extended family, though she had allowed Ash to assume the role of Orion's constant companion. She had become the silent guardian of the house, often the first to notice approaching visitors or changes in the weather. Soren joined Celeste on the porch, handing her a cup of hot chocolate. "Look at them," he commented with a smile, as if they were born together. It was true. The connection between Orion and Ash transcended the typical relationship between a boy and his dog. They communicated in a language of their own, made of subtle gestures and knowing glances. Where Orion went, Ash followed, and often it seemed the dog anticipated the boy's movements before they happened. "Do you ever think about that night?" asked Celeste, leaning against her husband's shoulder. "How close we came to not opening that door?" Soren nodded, his eyes following his son, who was now throwing a small stick for Ash to fetch. "Every day. I can't imagine our lives without them now." The memory of that stormy night had faded into a kind of family legend, but its impact remained present in every moment they shared. Soren, who once crossed the street to avoid passing near a dog, now volunteered at the local animal shelter with Martha. The fear that had accompanied him since childhood had been transformed into a passion for helping animals in need. That afternoon, as they watched Orion playing in the yard, a moment occurred that would forever remain etched in their memories. The boy, running enthusiastically, tripped over a hidden rock and fell hard on the snowy ground. Before either parent could react, Luna, who had been resting peacefully, rushed to his side with surprising agility for her age. The dog emitted that same low whimper from that first stormy night. Orion, whose face had contorted in pain, looked at Luna and immediately stopped crying. He wrapped his arms around her neck, burying his face in her warm fur. "Look at that," whispered Soren, his throat tight with emotion. Ash approached cautiously, licking Orion's hand before settling beside him in the snow, forming a protective circle around the boy. Celeste smiled, remembering the blizzard, the fear, and the moment a silent plea had changed everything. That freezing night, they hadn't just rescued a dog and her puppies. They had found a family. The years would continue to pass. Orion would grow, Ash would age alongside him, and Luna would eventually rest under the large oak tree at the edge of the property. But the bond formed that night, a connection that transcended species, based on compassion, trust, and unconditional love, would endure forever, in each of them. Under the starry sky of the White Mountains, an unlikely family rested united, proving that sometimes it takes an open heart to find the true meaning of home. My friends, we've reached the end of the story. Did you like it? What lesson can you draw from this story? Leave it here in the comments. Leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and watch this video that's playing on your screen. This story will impact you. See you next time.